going on, guys? It's K-Dub here with another episode of CryptoZombie. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a great day today. It has been a wild 24 hours for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is currently attempting to break back above the $40,000 level. We keep dipping below it. We've gone down into the $39,000 level several times yesterday alone. We also had Friday stocks closing at a very, very critical support. So a lot of investors and traders, both in the cryptocurrency and traditional asset space, are very concerned as to what could happen on Monday's open. Now, on top of that, we have Canada tracking and freezing certain bank accounts affiliated with things that they don't approve of, as well as tracking and potentially blocking or freezing cryptocurrency accounts as well. How is this even happening? Well, we'll show you that in just a minute. We also have the Federal Reserve prohibiting its officials to invest in cryptocurrencies, and we also have the Biden administration saying that they are going to be releasing an executive cryptocurrency order by the end of this month. So there are some very scary times ahead, potentially, if you're new to the space. So in today's video, we are going to talk about what is happening. We're going to go into something a little bit more serious than usual, and also how you can protect yourself from what could potentially be happening globally right now. And also, for everyone out there who is interested in the actual Bitcoin price, I am going to show you the exact levels that we need to pay attention to right now. And if Bitcoin does this, well, then great. And if it doesn't, well, then it could be not so great. Pretty much black and white, right? That's essentially what we're looking at right now. I'm going to let you know those exact levels. If you are looking to trade, definitely stick around for that. But that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. If you are not subscribed, definitely consider it. Super quick, let's talk about what's happening in the charts right now. So we do know that Bitcoin has fallen below the daily ribbon right here on the EMAs, and we have had two very ugly weekly candles. We have lost this support right here, and it looks like Bitcoin could be heading down around the $37,000 area. Now, having a look at stocks super quick, then we'll get back to Bitcoin. If we actually have a look at what the S&P is doing right here, you can actually see that right here, this level has provided some tremendous support, and we are sitting at this level again. But how long can we continue to find support on that level? Because we do have these two trends intersecting right here, and you can see that there's not much time left. In fact, right here, the latest, by the end of March, we would be looking for a massive move for traditional stocks. But something that's even a little bit more scary is if we take the bottom of this right here and we look at this top trend right here, you can actually see that we're putting in somewhat of a megaphone trend. This is actually considered an ascending broadening wedge. And if you really look at what these are, well, textbook says that eventually they end up breaking to the downside. So, is this looking pretty bad for stocks? Are we reaching the end of this? Could this signal the massive dump that everyone's waiting for? Well, we have to see how that plays out. Currently, right now, Bitcoin is sitting at the bottom of our blue zone territory, and we know that around that $39,700 level, it is very critical for Bitcoin to hold. Now, we have held above the 100 moving average on the weekly, which is currently sitting at around $32,000. So that could be the absolute last support for the bulls. If we do fall below 32,000, I'm not talking about a wick, I'm talking about closing like a weekly candle below it, like we close the week out at 29,000, then that could actually be the start of something very terrible for Bitcoin. But I don't want to talk about the doom and gloom. If we just have a look right here, as I said in yesterday's video, there is no real need to panic. In fact, these levels down here have provided excellent opportunities for accumulation. And you can see that we are still following this upwards trend no matter where you draw the line from. So ultimately, you are seeing that bounce every single time we come down to these levels. And not only to mention that, but just to point out super quick, Bitcoin often does like to do these big double bottoms, right? So you could see right here, essentially what we would be putting in is a giant double bottom for Bitcoin. But just to show you on the smaller scale, you could see right here, see, Bitcoin had a double bottom, boom, we had the bounce, and potentially that's what we could be putting in right here is another double bottom, right? And then as I said, that double bottom would then make a bigger double bottom. And you could see this multiple times in Bitcoin's chart. Back here, we actually had a little bit of an Adam and Eve stretched out over, well, the course of multiple months. But essentially, these types of patterns are really what you want to look for in the Bitcoin chart. So ultimately, if you are trading, these are the levels to watch. This is black and white, cut and dry. Here's what we're looking at, essentially. So this blue zone, the top of the blue zone, is sitting at the $42,500 level. The reason this was so important is because this is where we had that first initial blast off moment where we had the pullback. So essentially, if Bitcoin can break above 42,400, we do have some resistance at around 46,000, but most likely if you break 42.5, you're going to go up roughly to this area right here, 52. So break 42, go up to 52. Break below 39, close below 39, and most likely you're coming down to around the $36,000 level. So that's essentially what's going on with Bitcoin. If you guys are interested, if you're looking to trade that, check out the tutorials popping up above. I go over how to do that, but that is ultimately what is happening for Bitcoin. Now here is a little bit of the scary news, and this is what I want to talk about. So we saw this video right here from Canada. So you have, Deputy Chrystia Freeland saying the names of both individuals and entities as well as crypto wallets have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen and more accounts will be frozen. And what's scary is Jesse Powell actually commented on this. Now he's the CEO over at Kraken Exchange. He says due process is for plebs. Might make right in Canada if someone dissents, you just confiscate their wealth, revoke their licenses, exclude them from the financial system, and kill their pets. No need to debate the law, policy, or even rights when you have a monopoly on violence. And someone down here says, it's possible Kraken will be put in a position where told to freeze assets by police without judicial consent, and ye will probably comply, to which Jesse Powell said 100% yes, it has and will happen, and 100% yes, we will be forced to comply. If you're worried about it, don't keep your funds with any centralized regulated custodian. We cannot protect you. Get your coins and cash out and only trade person to person. Very interesting to hear him say this. Now, they went on to say, you're not necessarily safe just going on chain either. So by taking your coins off the exchange, well, which coins are you holding? He says the top reserve tokens with centralized issuance and redemption like USDT or USDC have centralized control of freeze functionality that can be commandeered as easily as a bank account. Meaning if you are holding USDC or you're holding Tether and you think you're safe and you're hedging in dollars, well, guess what? Tether can freeze your funds. USDC can freeze your funds. They can blacklist your wallets. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, he says stick to real crypto. Depends on your threat risk profile. Only thing that can't be seized is crypto. Take it in your brain as you cross the border empty-handed, right? You can memorize your seed phrase. Can't do that with any other asset. You don't want to be in a position where you can't afford to pay a lawyer because they stole everything. This is really important, guys, and you may have heard the term, not your keys, not your coins. And that's why personally, what I suggest is if you are concerned about this, get your coins off the exchange. Get them on something like a Ledger Nano X or a Ledger Nano S, and you can go over to ledger.com, or if you guys are interested, I actually do have links below in the description. Sometimes there are some bonuses or rebates associated with that. I'm not sure if they're running a campaign today. If you do want to support the CryptoZombie channel, by all means, you can use the links below. You don't have to, but either way, I highly suggest that you look into getting yourself a ledger, getting your coins off the exchange, and know that really, if you are holding these stable coins, you have to be careful because they can be frozen. Now, I'm not telling you to do this to do anything illegal or not to pay taxes. No, you should definitely 100%, do pay taxes and, abide all laws, but understand that this is your own property. And if you are leaving it on an exchange, not only can it get hacked, it can get seized, it can get frozen. And even if you aren't doing anything wrong, like he said, you don't want to be in a position where you can't afford to pay a lawyer because they stole all your funds, right? So you want to just at least position yourself to be safe. Now, moving on over to Tucker Carlson, we actually had Marty Bent. He talked a little bit more about the situation, and this is really what they had to say. And I highly suggest that you guys watch this clip. It's 6.5 minutes, but you're definitely going to want to watch what they had to say.
So the lawless crackdown you just saw going on in Canada right now will have consequences for all of us, because Trudeau has not just ended freedom of assembly and speech, arresting journalists. As part of his emergency authority, Trudeau also gave himself the power to control all money in Canada, to seize the bank accounts and crypto wallets of private citizens. On what basis? We don't know. He just asserted it. His deputy prime minister has announced those seizures are in progress now. Watch.
The names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen.
So when you imagine tyranny, you imagine people being loaded into some sort of transport to go to a camp. But this is 2022. Tyranny looks a little different now. Tyranny is when they take all your money and you have no power whatsoever. And that's exactly what Trudeau's government is doing to anyone who dissents. They're targeting crypto exchanges. That's where people keep their cryptocurrency. They convert it quickly into cash. Money on those exchanges is no longer safe, defeating the whole point of cryptocurrency. Jesse Powell, the CEO of the crypto exchange Kraken, just wrote that Canada, quote, 100% will force his company to freeze assets without judicial consent. Again, lawlessly, they're just doing it. He added this, quote, if you're worried about it, don't keep your funds with any centralized regulated custodian. We cannot protect you. You almost never hear businesses telling customers, we can't protect you. That's honest. So what are the criteria here? On what basis are Canadian authorities raiding currency platforms and seizing digital currencies? Well, Canada's so-called justice minister explained the criteria the other day. He announced that Canada's government doesn't need a court order in order to take all of your money. Here's the standard. If you've ever supported Donald Trump, then you can lose access to your bank accounts. Your political views will determine whether you have any money at all. Watch.
Well, I think if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried.
So again, without becoming hysterical about it, we cannot overstate the importance of what we're watching right here. It is a preview. Canada is not the last country in which this will happen, in which a neoliberal government will become a fascist government overnight while smiling and talking about diversity. You should know the Biden administration, once again, has not condemned this. In fact, they're emulating it. The White House is currently, right now, preparing to release an executive order on cryptocurrency that could come as soon as next week. According to Yahoo, the plan is for the federal government to, quote, come up with a government-wide strategy to regulate digital assets. The FBI, meanwhile, has just formed a new unit, quote, focused on digital asset seizure and blockchain-based law breaking. Now, what does that mean? Well, we're learning from Canada. Blockchain-based law breaking means that you donated money to a cause the government doesn't like, for instance, against vaccine mandates. And the State Department has no problem with that at all. So what does this mean for our financial system? Well, if you ran a big bank, you'd be very concerned about this. Once the government announces they can zero out people's bank balances if they don't like their Twitter feeds, people tend not to trust banks. You could get bank runs. They understand that. There's a lot of volatility ahead. This is a scary moment. Marty Bent is the founder of Tales from the Crypto, a Bitcoin podcast. He joins us tonight to explain. Marty, thanks so much for coming on. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, and it's easy to play the tape of people getting run over by horses, but the idea they could just seize your digital currency strikes me as a very big deal.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Tucker. But yes, they can only seize your digital currency, your Bitcoin, if you're holding it on an exchange, like you mentioned. It's much harder for them to seize it if you're in control of your Bitcoin by holding your own private keys, which is the beauty and the importance of Bitcoin as a monetary revolution. It allows you to actually control your money. It is a digital bearer instrument. It is digital cash. So as long as people are taking control of their own private keys, it's significantly harder to stop the spread of Bitcoin and prevent people from sending transactions.
So that's without getting too technical here, and thank you for saying that. So the promise of cryptocurrency is still in place, that you can operate transactionally without government oversight. How complicated is it not to use an exchange but to hold the keys for yourself? Could the average person do something like that?
Yeah, it's very easy. I mean, there's plenty of mobile apps that you can go download, whether it be Blue Wallet, Green Wallet. You can find those in your iOS stores or Android apps. These are open source wallets that anybody can download and easily create private keys, send their Bitcoin from an exchange directly to a wallet. They can back up their wallet with 12 words that if they were able to memorize them, theoretically they could walk around with their Bitcoin in their heads. So it's very simple to access the software that enables you to take control of your Bitcoin and actually custody it yourself.
God, I mean, you got to think if they're zeroing out people's bank accounts for political reasons, there's going to be a rush to cryptocurrency. I mean, in one sentence, do you expect that? Do you expect crypto to become more popular after this?
I think certainly we've seen the actions by the Canadian government wake people up, like, oh, if they can do this to our bank accounts for protesting about civil liberties, like how far will they go to stop us from transacting using the traditional system? And so I think over the last few weeks, people are really beginning to recognize the beauty of Bitcoin and the utility it provides as a distributed network that nobody can control. As long as you're controlling your own Bitcoin and you have those words written down secured, you have the freedom to control your money.
Which is, it turns out, the core freedom.
And something incredibly interesting, just considering what's going on with Canada, like Jan Woostenfeld pointed out, the Canadian Bitcoin Purpose ETF saw some substantial inflows on Thursday, a new all-time high of assets under management above 31,000 Bitcoin, roughly 37 Bitcoin higher than it was on February 2nd. He says overall funds have seen some inflows lately. The data includes futures funds, however, so it is implicitly assuming that someone getting exposure to a futures ETF is hedging their position with actual Bitcoin. Very interesting to see this increasing in a time when we are seeing this happen in Canada, and specifically the Canadian Bitcoin Purpose ETF is seeing the highest assets under management it has ever seen. Do we think this is a coincidence? Do we think that it's a coincidence that during a time of uncertainty with Russia, the US, and the Ukraine just decides to make Bitcoin legal tender? Or that El Salvador decides to make Bitcoin legal tender? Actually, I'm sorry, Ukraine didn't make it legal tender, but they did allow their citizens to buy and hold it and did make it legal. But here's another interesting thing. So Grayscale Bitcoin Trust in America, this is the US version, you're seeing investors show frustration with the commission's reluctance towards Bitcoin spot ETFs, saying that they don't feel protected at the moment. The SEC received over 170 letters from Grayscale investors in February alone. According to the CEO of Grayscale, Michael Sunshine, for us, a lot of the letters have been echoing what we at Grayscale have been articulating for quite some time and continue to do so today, that investors have been patient and deserve a Bitcoin spot ETF. In fact, one investor, Clay Craven, wrote, "I don't feel I'm being protected by the SEC. It's past time for the SEC to approve the GBTC ETF conversion and stop harming investors and the country by outsourcing capital to foreign countries where spot Bitcoin ETFs are already trading and approved by regulators." What is the US so afraid of? Why are they so afraid to approve the spot Bitcoin ETF? No, we must keep it cash settled. We must keep it futures. Meanwhile, the US is lagging to innovation happening in other countries. We already saw the Fidelity International launch their physical-backed exchange over in Europe, and now we have Zurich as well. Surveys done by Fidelity indicate significant institutional interest in cryptocurrencies in Europe, and the ETP is about to trade on the SIX stock exchange and listed on the etc. exchange in Germany. And if you're interested in what Fidelity has to say about it, this is what the global macro himself said about Bitcoin.
Well, certainly Bitcoin is probably more volatile. It's interesting, right? So the Sharpe ratio for Bitcoin, which is the annualized return over the annualized volatility over the past 10, 11, 12 years, is actually the same as a 60-40 index. Not many people know this, but if something goes up 260% and has a volatility of 80, you're kind of getting to the same place, but in a lot more of a nonlinear way. And I think part of that, I think a lot of people think of that volatility as a bug in the system, and that it will smooth out over time as Bitcoin comes of age, right? I liken Bitcoin as a teenager. A teenager has great potential, but they can also wreck your car, right? So it's like there's kind of a binary side to that. But I think of Bitcoin as where gold was in the 1970s, right? The gold it went from being money to being an asset class, and it went through price discovery. It was a teenager. It was coming of age. It was very volatile. It went up a lot, but it had huge drawdowns as well. Bitcoin is doing the same thing, but it's a little bit different because gold, of course, is a scarce commodity. That's why it's a store of value. But there can be some supply response in gold if demand is very high. Not a lot, because you have to mine it and all that stuff. But for Bitcoin, that supply response is even harder to achieve because of the pre-programmed slowdown in future growth. So the volatility, I think, in part is because a lot of people pile in, right? We know about the hodlers, but I also like to talk about the tourists that just come in and they're buying it because it goes up, and then they puke it out when it goes down. And so you have that very speculative aspect of it. But the other part is that you don't have the supply response if demand goes up. So therefore, that increase or decrease in demand is completely translated into price movements, right? So it's a kind of a price inelasticity, if you will.
Also, during a time of uncertainty, we are seeing crypto as the answer to a lot of these situations, right? They're freezing their bank accounts. You can't freeze crypto. You can't stop crypto. You can blacklist it. You can try to get it, but you can't get it, right? If you have your private keys, if you have a ledger, like I said, guys, check that out below. Definitely go look into a ledger. But as of May 1st, the Federal Reserve, or at least Federal Reserve officials, will not be able to trade stocks, bonds, or cryptocurrencies. A few months after introducing the first draft aiming to prohibit Fed officials from owning certain assets, the policymaking FOMC has updated the document to include cryptocurrencies. Some policymakers actually resigned after the revelations, but Fed Chair Jerome Powell insisted that the monetary body must enforce new rules on the matter. The new regulations also means that officials holding market positions have 1 year to dispose of the prohibited ones. Very, very interesting that now they don't want them holding cryptocurrencies either. Now I understand they're saying, well, if they do, then that will make them biased, towards cryptos. But it's just very funny. It's very, very funny how you are seeing this threat. But I do want to end on what Deutsche Bank had to say, actually, about cryptocurrencies. So analyst Marion Labor says that mass adoption of Bitcoin is just a matter of time. And as the world faces that fact, traditional financial institutions are warming up. Bitcoin could become the 21st century digital gold. Now, she does go on to say, about 2/3 of Bitcoins are used just for speculative purposes. Okay, so that's the first thing to note. Number two, due to the limited tradability, just a few additional large purchases or market exits can significantly impact the supply-demand equilibrium. And third, Bitcoin's value will continue to rise and fall depending on what people believe it's worth. Small changes in investors' overall perceptions about Bitcoin can have large impacts on price. We know this. However, Labor does believe that Bitcoin could become a safe haven asset and play the role of digital gold, as people have always sought assets that were not controlled by governments, and gold has had this role for centuries, but the adoption of Bitcoin could potentially turn it into the 21st century digital gold. And on that note, guys, I am going to leave you with your own thoughts. What do you think about today's video? How do you feel about what's happening? What are you doing specifically to protect yourself? Obviously, as I've mentioned, definitely getting them on a hardware wallet is probably the best bet. Writing down your code or memorizing it, like Kraken CEO was saying, can't take it if it's in your brain, right? So that being said, guys, that is it for me. Please be safe out there. Don't panic. If you're freaking out over these levels, as I said in yesterday's video, ultimately, I do believe we're setting up a giant double bottom. And I do believe that as long as we maintain this upwards trend, everything is looking good for Bitcoin. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. Be safe. Get your coins off the exchange. And if you are looking to trade, obviously, I pretty much showed you guys the exact levels that we're looking at. We need that $42,000 level to get flipped. If we break it, I think we're going to 52. If we don't break it, then I think $35,000 is on the table. But overall, I still think Bitcoin is going, I know Bitcoin, let's say that. I know Bitcoin is going to over $1 million in our lifetime. So really buying at 40, buying at 20, buying at 30, when you know where the price is headed, it's kind of a no-brainer. Dollar cost average, be safe, not financial advice, my friends, but I do love you. My name's K-Dub, this is CryptoZombie, and if you haven't seen these videos right here, right now, take your finger, click it, check them out. Until next time, stay crypto, and of course, peace out.